Today, I wanted to show up in an unscripted, authentic way to chat about a policy in our small business that actually changed my career as a piano teacher. So, I'll set the stage a little bit. I was a youthful piano teacher. I started teaching at 17 years old, and I had the unique privilege of studying with some piano teachers in my journey that actually viewed piano teaching as a sustainable, profitable, enjoyable business. That was also a passion. So that was helpful for me when I was setting up policies as a young piano teacher. I actually started my career as a travel piano teacher, which meant I would save scheduled weekly times in my schedule. I would pack up my little VW Rabbit that my dad rebuilt for me, and off I would head with my dual diesel tanks for locations very far from my rural home. So some of my travel commitments were an hour to an hour and a half away. And then in a neighborhood, I would have a series of piano students, sometimes even 12 students in an afternoon after I arrived. So I was teaching big days quite early on in my career, and I could tell right away that I loved teaching. I loved the connection with the students. I loved being part of their families, and I loved making music together. But one thing I learned early on is that if I was to invest the time in packing up and in driving all that way, that was just one way. So I would spend 2 to 3 hours on the road on teaching days. And if a student was away, that was okay, but I couldn't afford to miss the income from their missed lesson. So early on, I really had to think about that because I am a people pleaser. I wanted to make sure that my students got maximum value for what they'd paid and invested in music lessons with me. I wanted to see them. I didn't want them to miss lessons, but I also knew that if I'd reserved that time for them, I couldn't exactly run down the road with a sandwich board sign saying, "Hey, I have 4 o'clock on Tuesday available. I found out 2 hours ago. Can you pay me and come to a lesson?" I couldn't make that happen. Maybe some of you can. Anyways, so early on, I realized that creating a policy that was beneficial for me, but also that benefited my students and families by gifting them a predictable, reliable piano teacher would benefit us all. So recently I talked about boundaries versus benefits. And if you're curious about that thought after this video, I'll link that one so that you can take a peek. So what I started to wrestle with is that when I moved into a location, it suddenly started to feel like more of a pressure to make up lessons. Again, because people want the most value for their money. And I do too. As a parent, I want that. As a teacher, again, I wanted to see my lessons, but I started to feel a bit of societal pressure to make up lessons. So I tried every different thing. I tried actual makeup lessons where I'd write down how many birthday parties they had, how many sick days they had. I had a whole spreadsheet of who'd missed what and how I was going to make it up. So first of all, I tried adding a Saturday a week that I would come to lessons. I'd already been there during the times they were missed, because remember, I have students before and after my students come. But I thought, well, if they miss a lesson, I'll show up on Saturday and I'll make up lessons. And sometimes I would have 12, even 15 students that were diligent enough to come on a Saturday to see me for music lessons. Now, that was amazing. It meant that they wanted to be there, and I was really flattered. But I also started to realize that I'd been sitting there during their time. And I mean, I'm a busy bee. I would play the piano, I would look at repertoire, I would catch up on emails and administrative tasks, and I'd maybe do some marketing or tidy up my studio space. But regardless, I was there and I wasn't making the income when I showed up. So that meant I had to extend my work hours. Now, I also didn't realize how kind of hyperactive I was in those days because I was teaching 55 students each week, each for half an hour to 45 minutes and some even an hour. So that wasn't a slack schedule for a wonderfully engaging piano teacher. And then to show up on Saturdays as well, I noticed something. I was starting to get sick. I was starting to feel a bit. I don't think I've ever felt resentful. It's not in my personality, but sometimes I'd feel saddened by the thought that, oh, I was there, but now I'm going to miss out on things that I might want to do with my friends. And I was a volunteer with youth group and worship band. I was doing a lot of things, and I started missing out of a lot of things because I was diligent in my scheduled work time, but then I was also scheduling extra time that I wouldn't be getting paid. I also realized that my income was taking a hit because when the next solution I had, which was again outside the box thinking, is I would say, I can't do those long weeks. I can't reserve 6 days of work and keep up with all the deadlines and my own piano practice and study and admin. So then I thought, well, I have summers off. I don't get paid in the summers, but I have time in the summers. So I decided that I would offer out free lessons because I'd already been there in the studio, but I thought I could offer out 3 weeks of flex time where a student that had missed in the year, or if they'd missed 5 times, they could book 5 lessons and I would teach for the month of July. Well, seemed like a brilliant plan, right? Because I was youthful, I had July, and though I had been there at work, not getting paid if people missed, I really wanted to see my students. I wanted to add benefit to them. But then I found the problem is that my prices weren't high enough for me not to work for July and August. So that meant that I was not available to another employer because I was still trying to make up lessons for my students that they missed. I was there. So then I realized another problem. I couldn't get a job to pay my rent, which meant I couldn't actually afford to be a piano teacher anymore if I maintained that policy. So then I had to brainstorm again. And it felt a little bit like going upstream because a lot of my wonderful, generous colleagues in our community were offering free makeup lessons. And so I felt like I was like taking from my students. So then I thought maybe I could pay the bills better if I worked at Thrifty Foods. So I started floral design. These are Lego flowers. I didn't design Lego flowers, but I enjoyed learning. I did 100 hours of floral design courses and was very invested. But then I started getting calls again thinking, hey, Amy, are you teaching piano? And I thought, oh, no, I'm not teaching piano. I'm actually working at Thrifty Foods. But then I started accepting students here and there. But then I realized that in those gaps, if I wasn't making enough money, I had to juggle both jobs. And that made it so I wasn't actually as impactful of a piano teacher. I realized I couldn't keep my focus as much in lessons, couldn't be as engaged. I couldn't study the repertoire that I wanted to really see my students' progress. I also realized that if I started to get sick more often because I was overextending myself, then I couldn't be as reliable as a piano teacher. I would have to move my students' schedules more often and create stressors for family schedules or students getting dropped off and then finding out I wasn't there. I mean, I'm a consistent person, so that didn't happen often, but I realized I was overextending myself once again, trying to hold 2 careers. So that was my process. And I know this is a bit of a conversational journey here because I've now taught for 28 years. And so there was a lot of things that I had to think through and try all the ways of how can I thrive as a piano teacher. Now, the final decision happened before I hired colleagues to work alongside me. We started Motif in 2010, and by then I'd already taught for 13 years, with each part of my year always containing some teaching, some with 85 students a week, some as low as 20 students a week or in that range, and always contained some teaching for those 13 years. But in 2010, we hired a team of teachers to work alongside Jeff and I, and all of a sudden things were made clearer. I could not ask these wonderfully qualified, skilled teachers to come in to teach, wait in the studio, and then not get paid if their students showed up. That would be unethical for me as an employer. So suddenly I wasn't just protecting my own time, I was protecting time and energy for the staff that worked for me. But I also wanted to make sure it wasn't just about us creating an unfair boundary, it was about us creating employment that was sustainable and also music lessons that were enjoyable, that benefited families because I could offer them a piano teacher who was great at what they did, who was engaged in their child's learning, and who cared enough to practice repertoire, to write arrangements for their students, and to be there to support them in life along the way. So that is how I came to the decision of the policies we now have that benefit our families because they have consistency, they have educators that are engaged in their learning. They also have educators that care enough that when a student's not there, they are researching repertoire, they are brainstorming with colleagues, they are watching videos of how to become better music teachers on that student's behalf and learning new tools, learning new technology. So we definitely use those missed lesson times in beautiful ways. And we do have some ways that we do give back to our students during missed lesson times. If you'd like to hear more about how we do swap lessons and yet don't extend our teaching time, then let me know in the comments and I'll make a quick video about that too. So here's to creating policies that will help you thrive as a piano teacher. In our case, we don't guarantee missed lessons. We absolutely show up with consistency and enthusiasm. We value our customers. We love the students that we work alongside. We appreciate our families, and yet we also hold space for healthy practices that can keep us teaching. Because without that policy, I would be a wonderful florist, and I love being a florist, but I felt like my impact as a piano teacher would hopefully have a longer sphere of influence and impact, and I hope that that's true. And if you would like to subscribe to our Thrive in 3 newsletter, I chat more about ideas like this and ways to see you thrive as a music teacher and business owner. We'll see you in the next